Welcome to a new story in what we call amazing stories.
Okay.
So today on the deep dive, we're venturing into a really compelling phenomenon, and
Yeah,
it's one of those that really gets you thinking. And I think it's a great fit for amazing stories because it is pretty amazing, right?
absolutely.
So you've sent us some fascinating material,
Yeah.
an academic article titled El Niño Fidencio y Espinazo, Nuevo León. Cuando la persona se convierte en el lugar, the Wikipedia entry for Niño Fidencio, and your own overview of his life and impact.
Yeah, fantastic sources.
Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Our goal in this deep dive is to truly grasp who El Niño Fidencio was, the remarkable impact he had on those he encountered, and this incredibly unique relationship that developed between him and the town of Espinazo.
Yeah, and I think that last point is going to be the real kind of crux of this whole thing, this
Yeah.
relationship between a person and a place and how they're inseparable in a way.
Right. And this is all happening in the early part of the 20th century in Mexico.
That's right.
So let's start by just laying the groundwork here.
Okay.
Jose Fidencio Constantino Cintora, known as El Niño Fidencio, was born on November 13th, 1898 in Guanajuato.
Okay.
But his story really takes hold when he was raised in Espinazo, Nuevo León.
Gotcha.
And he died at a relatively young age on October 19th, 1938.
Mm-hmm.
So even early in his life,
Right.
there are these really notable characteristics.
Yeah.
He was described as quiet, didn't eat meat, preferred being alone,
Interesting.
and even earned the nickname El Niño, the child,
Right.
because of a supposed angelical aura. And it's also interesting that he never married or showed any romantic interest.
Yeah, and that almost kind of plays into that, some of the things that we see with saints, right? That they're
Right.
that there's something that sets them apart from a very early age.
Right.
Yeah,
And there is that element with him as well.
definitely. Yeah.
The sources also point out his limited formal education only reaching the third grade,
Mhm.
which sets him apart from conventional figures of authority.
Right.
Right, be they medical professionals or religious leaders.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And despite that limited schooling, he did form some significant relationships.
Yeah.
There was Enrique Lopez de la Fuente,
Right.
a childhood friend who later became a key protector for Fidencio.
Yeah.
And our overview also suggests the possibility that he may have gained knowledge of herbal remedies from a local priest.
Interesting.
So these early connections, it seems, played a crucial role in kind of shaping his path.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even without that extensive formal education, these personal bonds likely provided him with that foundational understanding of traditional healing. And that's
Yeah.
really key, right?
Yeah,
Especially given the area that we're talking about and that time period.
right.
And a network of social support,
Right.
and that would become increasingly vital as his reputation grew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying the content, please leave a like and subscribe.
Of course.
Also, if there's a specific topic you'd like us to talk about,
Oh,
let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Thank you, and let's keep going.
Let's do it.
Okay, so around 1921, Fidencio makes the move to Espinazo to help care for Enrique's children.
Oh.
And it's in this seemingly ordinary desert town that his healing practices really begin to emerge.
Interesting.
So you've got this guy who's already kind of unusual,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then he moves into this town, and it's there that things really start to happen.
Hmm.
And it's during the 1920s that El Niño Fidencio's fame as a curandero, a folk healer, truly takes off.
Right.
And what really stands out in the sources are his rather unconventional methods.
Yeah, so we see the use of herbs, water, oil, mud elements that have roots in, traditional healing.
Yeah.
But then we also encounter these accounts of using glass shards
Whoa.
and even knives in his practices.
Okay.
So that's pretty striking.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost unbelievable, right?
It is, yeah.
The stories of surgeries being performed without any anesthesia, and yet those undergoing them reportedly felt no pain. Yeah.
It's really remarkable, right?
Mhm.
And the sheer range of ailments that he was said to cure is equally astonishing. Everything from blindness and leprosy to tuberculosis,
Wow.
paralysis, and even what was believed to be demonic possession.
Okay, so, I mean, given the unconventional and potentially alarming nature of these methods, what does that tell us about the level of desperation or
Yes.
the strength of faith
Exactly.
among those seeking his help?
I think that's a crucial question, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it really speaks to the circumstances of the time.
Yeah,
For many, conventional medicine would have been either inaccessible,
right.
unaffordable,
Mm,
or simply ineffective against the conditions that they faced.
great.
And so this creates this void,
Yeah.
this space for someone like Fidencio,
Yeah.
whose seemingly miraculous abilities offer this beacon of hope.
Right.
And so the fact that he lacked formal medical training
Yeah.
might paradoxically enhance his mystique in the eyes of those
Yeah.
who felt let down by these traditional systems. So it's this really complex interplay of factors.
Right. And
Right.
his consultorios were just open fields or a simple chair under a tree.
It's so different from
Yeah.
the way we think about medical environments today.
It's such a stark contrast to the formal medical environments that we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is how this very humble setting in Espinazo began to transform into a major pilgrimage site.
Right. It really did.
The sources describe thousands of people flocking there,
Yeah.
not just from within Mexico, but also from the United States and Central America.
It's incredible.
So this massive influx of people fundamentally reshaped
Yeah,
the landscape and the very identity of Espinazo.
absolutely. And this is where it becomes much more than just a personal story, right?
Right.
It transitions from this relatively quiet and unassuming desert town
Yeah.
into this vibrant hub
Right.
of people seeking cures and spiritual comfort
Yeah.
and this rapid transformation.
Right.
I think that's a key element in understanding how Fidencio and the town
Right.
become so deeply interconnected.
Yeah, and of course, a figure as popular as Fidencio, practicing outside the established norms,
Yeah.
was bound to attract opposition, right? The Catholic Church definitely took a negative view,
Hmm.
seeing his popularity as a threat to their authority.
Right. I mean, it's understandable in a way from their perspective. I mean, Fidencio's direct connection
Yeah.
with his followers and his apparent success in healing challenged the church's traditional role
Yeah.
in spiritual and even social welfare.
Right.
But it is important to remember, as our overview highlights,
Yeah.
that Fidencio never charged for his services,
Right.
and he consistently maintained that he was simply an instrument of God.
Right.
So it complicates any straightforward accusation of him being this self-serving charlatan,
Right.
and it likely resonated deeply with his followers.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he had this purity of purpose about him.
Yes,
Right.
definitely.
Interestingly, he also found a powerful supporter in President Plutarco Elias Calles.
Oh, wow.
Calles actually visited Espinazo in 1928 for a healing session. And this event significantly amplified Fidencio's fame.
Mhm.
I mean, it's quite a remarkable moment when the leader of the country seeks out a folk healer.
It really is. And if we kind of connect this to the bigger picture of the time,
Yeah.
the Cristero War was ongoing,
Yep.
the conflict between the Mexican government and Catholic rebels.
Right.
And so Calles might have viewed Fidencio as this non-clerical spiritual figure
Right.
who could potentially garner popular support
Right.
and perhaps even offer this alternative focus of faith during a period of intense religious conflict.
Right.
So it's this fascinating intersection of politics, popular spirituality,
Yeah.
and the social climate of the time.
Right. The sources also provide these glimpses into some of Fidencio's specific healing methods
Yeah.
and the places within Espinazo that became associated with them.
Okay.
There's El Pozo de los Leprosos,
Mm.
the well of the lepers,
Yeah.
where the sick would bathe in water believed to possess curative properties.
Right, almost like a
It-
baptismal thing.
Yeah. And then there's La Silla de las Curaciones,
Okay.
the healing chair
Right.
situated under a tree,
Yeah.
where he reportedly performed interventions,
Okay.
even cutting, without causing bleeding and miraculously healing patients.
So these very specific locations within Espinazo, they really become central points
Yeah.
in his healing ministry,
Right.
imbued with these stories of his actions.
Yeah. We also hear about El Campo del Lodo,
Okay.
the mud field,
Yeah.
where people would roll in special mud-seeking relief.
Right.
And then these rather dramatic accounts of using knives, apparently opening the throats of those with respiratory issues,
Oh.
and then simply blowing on them.
Interesting.
These are certainly
Yeah,
vivid,
it's very visual.
and unconventional images.
Yeah. And these methods, while perhaps unsettling from a modern medical perspective,
Yeah.
undoubtedly contributed to his reputation for performing miraculous cures.
Right.
The sheer spectacle and this unwavering faith surrounding these practices likely played a significant role in the hope and belief
Yeah.
that they instilled in his followers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Then, rather abruptly, Fidencio passes away in 1938 at just 39 years old.
Wow.
The official cause is recorded as pneumonia,
Okay.
but there's this strong and enduring belief among his followers that it was more of a spiritual retreat
Okay.
and that he continues to heal from beyond.
Right. So the idea is that he didn't really die.
Yeah.
He just kind of moved on to a different plane.
Right. And that is absolutely key to understanding his lasting impact.
Yeah, because it transforms his passing not into an end,
Yeah.
but rather into this transition into a more potent spiritual force
Right.
forever connected to Espinazo.
Yeah.
It really cements that bond
Yeah.
between the man and the place.
Right. So let's delve a bit deeper into Espinazo itself.
Okay.
Before Fidencio's arrival, it was a small, relatively insignificant desert town,
Okay.
primarily serving as a railway station.
Mm-hmm.
The population experienced very little growth in the early 20th century.
Got you.
It was mainly home to railway workers and employees of the local ranches.
Right.
But
Yeah.
what's really striking is the timeline.
Okay.
So Fidencio arrives in Espinazo around 1925,
Mm-hmm.
initially working as a laborer on Teodoro von Wernich's hacienda.
Okay.
Then in 1927, he reportedly heals von Wernisch.
Interesting.
And this event leads to his public recognition as a healer
Yeah.
in Monterey newspapers in 1928.
Yeah.
And that's when things really start to change, right?
Yeah, that's the turning point
Yeah.
for both Fidencio and Espinazo.
Right. The pilgrimages begin in 1928.
Right.
And suddenly you have these Campos del Dolor camps housing thousands of sick individuals seeking help.
Wow.
Espinazo's population explodes, reaching over 1,000 by 1930. But then following Fidencio's death in 1938,
Right.
it experiences a dramatic decline.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's quite sobering to see how deeply the fate of an entire town was intertwined with one individual.
It really is. And that boom and bust demographic pattern,
Yeah.
it really highlights how absolutely central Fidencio was
Yeah.
to Espinazo's existence
Yeah.
during that relatively short period. You know,
Yeah.
the town's fortunes were almost entirely dependent
Right.
on his presence and the faith that he inspired.
Right.
Yeah.
And even after that decline, Espinazo doesn't simply revert to its pre-Fidencio state.
Right.
The sources really illustrate how its social and economic dynamics become permanently centered around this pilgrimage.
Yeah, and that's fascinating because it shows how this one individual's influence can have these long-lasting effects
Right.
even after they're gone.
Even today, while the permanent population is relatively small, tens of thousands of people visit during the festivals in March and August.
It's incredible.
So the town's economy is now heavily reliant on these pilgrims.
Right.
You know, renting out rooms and land, selling food,
Yeah.
and Niño Fidencio-related merchandise that forms the economic backbone of Espinazo.
Right.
And the article even points out that a significant portion of the residents have limited formal education,
Yeah.
underscoring their dependence on this pilgrimage-driven economy.
So it highlights this fascinating dynamic where a person's spiritual influence not only shapes belief systems,
Yeah.
but can also fundamentally alter
Right.
the socioeconomic landscape
Right.
of an entire region,
Yeah.
demonstrating the tangible power of faith.
Right. And this brings us to this really fascinating concept of
Yeah.
Fidencio becoming a persona lugar, a person place.
Right. That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, the academic article puts forward this argument that Espinazo is considered sacred because Fidencio inhabited it,
Okay.
not due to any inherent geographical features.
Right. So it's not like a sacred mountain or
Yeah.
a holy spring or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just that Fidencio was from Espinazo,
Yeah.
but that his very being and actions made the place itself sacred for his followers.
Exactly. It's this crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It challenges our traditional understanding of sacred sites,
Yeah.
which are often considered holy due to these natural formations or pre-existing religious significance.
Right.
But in the case of Espinazo,
Yeah.
the sanctity originates directly from the person of Fidencio and
Yes.
the extraordinary events that transpired there during his life.
Yeah. And there's this really powerful quote from Ariel Lopez de la Fuente,
Okay.
who's a leader within the Iglesia Fidencista Cristiana.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Espinazo is because of Niño Fidencio.
Hmm.
Without Niño Fidencio, it's nothing.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And that really encapsulates this profound connection.
It does, yeah. It really emphasizes this inseparable continuum
Yeah.
between Fidencio and Espinazo.
Yeah.
So for believers, the boundaries between the person and the place
Yeah.
become blurred.
Yeah.
They are intrinsically linked.
In their spiritual understanding.
Right. the sources detail some of these sacred sites within Espinazo
Okay.
and their direct association with Fidencio's activities.
Right.
There's El Pirulito, the
Mhm.
now dry tree, where he supposedly rested and received his gift of healing.
Okay.
And then we have the temple,
Yeah.
which was once the hacienda
Right.
and now houses his tomb.
Yeah.
It's filled with religious icons and Fidencio's personal relics,
Right.
tunics, rosaries, crucifixes.
And those objects serve as tangible links,
Yeah.
further solidifying the connection between the man and the place in the minds of devotees.
Right. And then you have Huellas de Fidencio, Fidencio's footprints,
Oh, wow.
preserved in cement under glass,
Okay.
where devotees place their own feet seeking that direct connection.
It's almost like a relic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fidencio's room is preserved, visible through windows, containing his bed, bathtub, even jars purportedly holding tumors he removed. It's almost like a living testament.
It's like a museum, almost.
Yeah.
To his
yeah.
presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the hallway,
Yeah.
filled with testimonials, photos, heartfelt thank you notes, a wall adorned with crutches.
Yeah. I mean, those are powerful,
Yeah.
tangible expressions of faith
Yeah.
and stories of healing that further reinforce the sacred nature of the space
Yeah.
and its enduring link to Fidencio's power.
Yeah. Yeah, we also have El Charquito,
Okay.
the sulfurous water well where he would submerge the sick,
Mm.
and El Columpio, the
Yeah.
swing where he supposedly cured mutes and paralytics by swinging them forcefully.
Oh, wow.
These are all places where his healing acts are vividly remembered.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the different sites
Yeah.
are all associated with very
Yeah.
specific types of healing
Yeah.
or ailments.
Right.
Yeah.
And importantly, continue to be part of this living tradition.
Right. And it's vital to emphasize that these sites aren't just historical markers, right?
Mhm.
They're still actively used today by materialists,
Right.
individuals within the Fidencista tradition
Yeah.
who enter trance states believed to allow the spirit of Niño Fidencio
All right.
to work through them, continuing his healing ministry
Yeah.
in the present day.
Yeah.
And this continuous practice keeps his presence alive
Right.
and palpable in Espinazo.
So the devotion to El Niño Fidencio is clearly ongoing
Yeah.
and deeply felt, even though the Iglesia Fidencista Cristiana isn't an officially recognized religion.
Right.
The existence of hundreds of cajitas or mediums who channel his spirit speaks to that enduring faith.
It really does. And the annual pilgrimages to Espinazo in March and October are massive gatherings,
Yeah.
drawing tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And the article mentions that significant Fidencista rites,
Yeah.
like coronations to become a medium, quinceañeras, and weddings,
Okay.
as well as acts of penance,
Yeah.
all take place in Espinazo,
Wow.
underscoring its central role
Yeah.
in their religious practice.
Yeah. And there's the strong belief among devotees that healings performed in Espinazo are inherently more potent
Right.
simply because of Fidencio's spiritual presence there.
It's like the town is imbued with his healing powers.
Right. It's like the atmosphere itself is charged.
Yeah, exactly.
And this leads us to the concept of la presencia del niño,
Okay.
the presence of the child,
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual energy that devotees genuinely feel
Yeah.
when they are in Espinazo.
Right. And even the mediums themselves
When-
reportedly need to visit Espinazo
Right.
to recharge their spiritual energy.
Yeah.
And for those with severe ailments,
Yeah.
seeking healing specifically in Espinazo
Yeah.
is often considered essential.
Right.
So it solidifies this intrinsic link
Right.
between Fidencio and the place.
It's like the town itself acts as a conduit
Yes.
for his miraculous abilities.
Exactly.
And the academic article so beautifully connects this back to the idea of space appropriation.
Right.
The devotees, through their collective experiences. Rituals and deep emotions associated with Fidencio
Yeah.
have transformed Espinazo
Yeah.
into a profoundly significant and sacred place.
Right. It wasn't inherently so,
Right.
but it became that
Yeah.
through their shared faith and ongoing practices.
And so this isn't just a historical anecdote.
Yeah.
Right? It raises these fundamental questions about how we, as humans,
Yeah.
create meaning and sacredness in
Lot
the
of-
world around us.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes you think about the power of belief
Yeah.
and how it can transform
Yeah.
not just individuals, but entire communities
Yeah.
and even physical spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Espinazo becomes what the article terms the anthropological place
Okay.
for Fidencistas,
Yeah.
where all these essential elements, myth, ritual, imagination, action, and emotions,
Right.
converge and are geographically grounded.
It's almost like a focal point
Yeah.
for their entire belief system.
Yeah, and some devotees even refer to it as Tierra Santa or the New Jerusalem.
Powerful image.
Yeah, really illustrating its profound spiritual significance in their lives.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the article brings us back to this central and compelling argument.
Hmm.
Fidencio and Espinazo form this unbreakable continuum.
Right.
The saint is part of Espinazo, and Espinazo, in a very real sense for his followers, is part of the saint.
They are inextricably and forever linked.
Right.
Yeah.
It really makes you reflect on the remarkable ways in
Yeah.
which individuals can imbue seemingly ordinary places
Right.
with extraordinary meaning and profound spiritual significance.
Yeah.
How a person's legacy,
Right.
their actions, and the deep faith they inspire
Mhm.
can become so completely intertwined with a specific location
Yeah.
that they become almost inseparable in the
Yeah.
minds and hearts of their followers.
It's a really powerful example of that phenomenon.
It really does leave you pondering what other examples might exist where a
Yeah.
person's influence becomes so deeply connected to a place.
What they, in essence, become that place.
Absolutely.
That's something for you to consider after this deep dive.
Yeah, that's a great thought to leave our listeners with.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.